If you're going to get this figure, I recommend picking it up somewhere that is going to have fantastic customer service like Big Bad Toy Store. Check them out at the link in the description.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey there, collectors, it's Steven here, and welcome to another SH Monster Arts review, where we're going to be taking a look at the SH Monster Arts Iris. So this year, we have had quite a few big ticket items in the SH Monster Arts line, and Iris is going to continue that trend. At a US MSRP of distribution of about $300 or so, is this one going to be worth the purchase as a crown jewel of the collection, or is this going to continue a trend of SH Monster Arts releases, which unfortunately are overpriced with quality issues? I love the Heisei era Gamera movies. I hype this thing up with my unboxing. There may be some other folks who are really happy with this release and really wanted to say this was amazing, but I didn't want to post this video. Let's take a look to see whether or not it's going to be worth adding into your collection. Neil deGrasse Tyson once commented about winter. I'm going to embellish this a little bit. A lot of folks like winter, right? It's beautiful, the snow, the trees look a certain way. But unfortunately, once you actually start to look at winter enough, you look at the landscape, you look at what's hidden underneath the snow piles, you actually look at the forest, you start to see what winter entails beyond just the beauty that folks like to stereotype winter with. You start to see that there are remains of the creatures that unfortunately didn't have a chance to make it. You start to look under the snow, you start to see the moldy leaves, you turn over rocks, and stuff just doesn't look good. Iris is definitely going to be that way, and I'm also encapsulating a little bit of the articulation section as well. At a glance and on paper, Iris definitely should be three claps here. We're playing a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's pretty much all you can fit in your deck. But when we look at the execution of Iris, unfortunately, it doesn't quite nail it there. When we take a broad strokes look at Iris, there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and I actually really like it. We do have a lot of translucent plastic that is used, and it's actually used really cool, except for one area, again, we'll talk about in the articulation section, and Iris just looks really neat. The head of Iris, or I guess what you might call the head, does use some translucent plastic, and that's actually going to be the main silver cage around the orb, which is really cool and almost actually tricked me there to begin with, which is nice. And then we do have the silver armor throughout Iris, which in some spots, notably on the plating on the back, which has a little bit of a purple tint, a little bit of a spray, which, magnifique. We do have the blue translucent plastic, which is going to be on the main torso of Iris as well as on the thighs, which looks great. And we do have the gold that is on the stomach as well. Magnificent. All of the orange on Iris is accompanied by a lighter orange spray, which looks amazing as well. To accompany the silver plating on Iris, including those giant shoulder pads, we do have orange on the underside, and that's going to be metallic. When we look at the tentacles, the tendrils, whatever, of Iris, we do have some really neat sculpted details, including some sinewy bits at the base that lead all the way up to those pincers, which are going to use translucent plastic, which, hey, we do have those little orbs, which look really nice. However, as you're looking at the photography, you may see some spots of Iris that make you think, ooh, that's an excessive paint drip, and oh, that's a scratch, and oh, ooh. And unfortunately, this is going to be a telling sign that as we go on, there's also going to be one spot on the knee that I unfortunately didn't have a chance to photograph at this time. Iris does begin to slowly chip away, quality-wise, at what could otherwise be an awesome-looking figure. And you may be thinking to yourself, oh, Steven is just talking about some nitpicks, but when you have a scratch that's going to be on the back of the shoulder plating, or something that's going to be a drip on the clavicle of Iris, or keep in mind, like I talked about, $300, that's going to be borderline unacceptable here. Articulation is not Iris's strong suit, and there is quite a bit to talk about, so I'm going to try to keep it rather short. In summation, it is going to be a bit of quality control and some very interesting design issues, which I'm not quite sure why Tamashii decided to do what they did when across multiple lines they have similar design choices which work, but they didn't take the steps that they did here. It'll make sense when we talk about it. The tentacles are removed because we'll talk about those when it's time. So we do have a neck configuration here, which is going to be a section of ball joints, and realistically speaking, they all move somewhat well. Iris can look down about that far, look up about that far, look left and right, somewhat restricted just because of all of this armor, I guess I would call it, which is pretty cool. We get a little bit of rotation as well, so there we go. Mostly looks up about that far if you really push it. I'll talk about the back plating in just a minute here. So that's pretty cool. The shoulder spikes are actually on ball joints, so we can move them around a bit. They do wiggle, which is pretty cool. We get a little bit of rotation, and they do actually have a specific cutaway for the base of the tentacles, or the tendrils, I'm going to call them tentacles, which is pretty solid. Pretty solid. We do actually have, I'm actually going to show you a picture of it, an ab crunch and a waist ball joint. So Iris can utilize them, which is pretty cool. Twisting and turning is real nice, which is good. But do keep in mind, because of the overall design, including this spike here, going forward and going back, which we do have this spike here, that is going to limit backward movement. So it's mostly going to be twisting and turning from side to side, but if, backwards, we got that. So Iris can look down just a little bit. Quality control. All right, so for the shoulders, if we pop these off, which I have done, it doesn't really give us much more movement, but keep in mind we do have these long blades, I guess one might call them. I'm going to talk about them right now because we do actually have swivel movement there, so we can get them to be a bit more cooperative and get a little bit of movement out of what appears to be just a ball joint there for the shoulders, but we can raise and lower them, which is really cool. So this is about the best Iris can get with T-posing, and they do rotate here as well. We do have an elbow hinge, which effectively is going to act as a ball joint. Gives us about 90 degrees, which is fine, and it does rotate pretty much at both points there, so give us that forearm swivel as I talked about, as well as a sort of bicep swivel there. Normally we talk about that being it, but interestingly, these mostly just kind of wiggle back and forth, so we get a little bit more movement out of there. Now, for the back plating, I'm going to talk about this because then we're going to talk about poor design choices and quality. Let's get a refocus there real quick. So if you're familiar with the SH MonsterArts Mitsusune, you're pretty familiar with Iris's back plating here, because this is going to be on a ball joint, which is cool. This is on a ball joint. This section here is on a ball joint. These are on ball joints. This is on a ball joint, neat. And then this is going to be on a ball joint as well. So they can twist and turn, and when you are moving stuff around, thankfully, this will move. So if you do move the blades, okay, you can see why that's effective there, which is really cool. So they kind of thought this through a bit to help Iris move. Nice. Quality control, time, and talking about the rest of the articulation, and also the questionable engineering. So Iris's hips and the legs, they're not that well thought out because, first, you do have these spikes that go on the legs here, down here. These like to pop off, as you saw. They're easy to pop off. So there's that. Now, these are meant to pop off, but even still, with them being so easy to pop off as you're moving the legs around, these will easily pop off. These don't really affect the hoof, the feet articulation that much, but we'll talk about that in a second. So for the hips of Iris, we do have pull-down style hips. And you will see sort of here right now, we do have that ball joint in the hips. I'm sorry, in the waist. But yes, nevertheless, we do have pull-down style hips. So they pull down about that far. And Iris can kick forward about that far and that far back. So cool. And when it comes to, here's where we have an issue with mine. Kicking out to the side, Iris can do about that. We do have a floating ring in the hips here. That can get in the way of that movement, but c'est la vie. We do have a little bit of rotation here for the ball joints. Now, here is what I'm going to say. Be careful with the hips. Why? As I was exploring the articulation of Iris and getting Iris to move out this far and experimenting, I had an issue where this leg popped off. Okay, I do it all the time with my figures. If you watch my Dragon Ball Figure Arts videos, not a big problem. This happened. Unfortunately, I didn't get a picture of the cavity in the leg. It was late at night and I wasn't thinking too well. But the actual joint popped out of the hip cavity in the thigh of Iris. There, the hip joint construction. So what does this look like? So the joint, as you can clearly see, is on a ball joint that plugs into the hip connection. And then you're seeing a little ball joint there, which chances are, I haven't structured this yet, we'll maybe see it. That ball joint actually connects into a piece on the back of the thigh that moves up and down with the top of the hinge on the knee. Once this happens, it's done. You're done. You're done. You cannot get this fixed without busting out the super glue. Yeah, so you probably saw a little bit of like a speck on the joint. I believe it was faulty glue. I believe that was glue that let up, and it's over. Now, the ball joint, you think, okay, maybe that's like an anchor. No. We'll talk about that in a second. It was done. It's broken. It's faulty. So I was able to get this fixed with a little bit of super glue. It is holding in place. Obviously, you saw there's no loss of movement there because that joint is just glued into the thigh. So it is what it is. All right. Now, the knees. You can already see a little bit going on here. This happened actually after the photography session for Iris. I'm specifically moving this part because I want to show you what will happen if it does. All right. So you can obviously see we do have a double hinge system. The lower portion of the leg has a hinge. We also have the top system here, which has a hinge, and obviously there is a ball joint that I showed you, which is about right here. So, the top hinge, as you can see, it moves, and it moves in. So as it moves in, this portion of the thigh pushes in, and this ball joint moves accordingly. So it can move up to accommodate, and then it moves down and in to accommodate as well. And there you go. It just popped off. I didn't plan that. But it has been an issue ongoing that is happening. And then you can see as well, this was stuck with paint. Yeah. So that's something that I would expect like out of a more affordable, older NECA figure. It did happen to some of my Ultra Act Ultraman figures. This takes a considerable amount of time to fix. And usually the way that I fix this when it happens is I actually pop this part off. Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to do this. I get another part here, usually like this will help to fish the ball joint down. Certainly. Maybe it'll work. Hopefully I'll get. And because of the way it's structured. Come on. I think I've Wait, it's a loose connection. Okay, so it is a loose connection. And then with this hinge, which there's pins. Why? This is a $300 figure. You push forward because you can see that hole is at an angle. So I push in. Until you hear that satisfying pop. Okay, it didn't pop this time. And then what I do is I push this in. And then that hinge will line up. And then there we go. So now it kind of works, but it will happen on both legs. I don't want to show you on this one because we're at 10 minutes already, unedited. So yes, we do have a single hinge down here as well that moves. And as you saw, we do have ball joints. However, effectively that ball joint is just for the connection. I will say that it is kind of difficult to get either of these hinges to move. And as you saw, this one was stuck with paint. When it comes down to the feet of Iris, we do have ankle rockers and hinges to allow us to close the feet and open them up. Here is a dedicated picture. They use translucent plastic to hold it in place. I am worried that that will crack over time. I have experience with this because of the original Ava Unit 01 Robot Spirits. They did the same thing, and that cracked. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on over because my camera is telling me I have 20% battery life left. All right, so for the tentacles, the way that this works is you just simply pop the ball joints on. Not a big deal. I'm only going to do one side just because it's real easy, but I am going to show you the one that is a bit weaker for mine. So this one is pretty simple. This one is somewhat fine, and the little pincers, I guess you might call them, they open and close with no real issues. That's nice, except for when they pop off. So I'll keep that off just for moving this section along. However, here is going to be the real issue that seems to be stemming for a lot of folks, and it stems from quality control and engineering issues. So you pop it in, no big deal. Keep in mind that you have the two little meaty, sinewy bits, and then you have the one section at the base, which, where is it at? It doesn't have it there, but you have the two. That's how you connect them. So it is a variable quality because where the bottom is connected in, it's effectively connected in on like a ball joint that rotates around. And then this section here is, I believe, on a ball joint as well. And then we have ball joints all the way up to the tip here. I don't want to move this tip just because it's made of translucent plastic, the whole thing, and it's painted, and I don't want to go for any breakage. Now for this part, we do actually have a swivel hinge combo system, and yeah, it can get loose. So let me go ahead and pop this off just for the sake of showing you how this works. It's not difficult to pop this off, so you can see it swivels there. There's a hinge, allows you to move it up and down, and then you can swivel it here. So that's how this works. However, mine, particularly at this one, is somewhat loose, but you've probably asked yourself, Stephen, how are you getting it to hold a pose like this? Very carefully. Now, depending on how you move the tentacle, that may actually pop off, but nevertheless, that's something that you can fix. Just pop it back on. Otherwise, aside from the base here, I haven't had that much of an issue with Iris and the tentacles just being loose. So with that being said, that is Iris's articulation in a nutshell. He's kind of in pieces right now. So in summation, what do we have? We do have engineering, which is somewhat questionable. Hip design, which doesn't really make too much sense. Instead of doing this whole moving the knee and having this, I'm sorry, but what? This does better than that. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Iris's design for the joints is really questionable, and I don't understand why they didn't bring somebody else in to engineer and tool this thing when they have the ability to do so. Now, speaking of frustrating, let's go ahead and talk about the accessories, which unfortunately, just because of the design alone in and of itself, I really don't think there was another way they could have gone about this. Iris comes with the wings. Yes, the wings are an accessory. So with that, it is a somewhat convoluted process. Like I said, there was really no way they could get around it, but I will give them credit where credit is due. First, what I would do, don't follow the instructions to a T. Go with making the support stand first. All right, so we make the support stand. We are all good to go. Next, let's actually take a look at the wings. This is what I would do after this. So with the wings, they're nice. They're made of translucent plastic, which, oh boy, this could be a problem. But they reflect light really well, and they have a nice metallic sheen to them with a transition of colors. Mwah, chef's kiss. At the tip, that is where you're going to put the little pincer replacement parts. And as you can see here, they are very, very small with the tip parts. So be careful when you're attaching them. You can do a little bit of rotation back and forth, or on the actual tip parts that you are putting on, use heat, and that should help you soften them up. So this way you put them on, no big deal. From there, what I would do is swap out the lower leg parts. They are specific to left and right, so keep that in mind. And then you need to use the aforementioned wonderful knee system, so this way you can bend Iris's legs in a specific way, as well as have his head looking upwards. So once you do that, you should be good to go. I'm going to take this time a little bit to drag it out just enough, so this way we have enough time to talk about how you build the stand, which that you can follow through with the instructions. However, keep in mind you are going to have to make adjustments. Then, when it comes to attaching the wings, this should be the last part. Go ahead and attach the wings, but keep in mind the one with the big swoops goes on the bottom, and you do have to note the directions. Left and right, they're interchangeable. Really, it doesn't matter, but also keep in mind how they are textured, and specifically top and specifically bottom. Iris does come with 2 different crotch cradles. It's the best way to describe it. To support the bottom of Iris, one is going to be used for when Iris is standing, and the other is going to be for flight mode. When you do have Iris up on the stand for flying, there is a little bit of modulability, customizability, you know what I'm talking about. So it is not dedicated, and there is not a specific science to this. It's a bit of an art, and it's a balancing act. That is a terrible thing to say. 360 spin view. Why is it terrible? I will tell you why. It gives you a tumble warning in the instructions, and there's a lot of translucent plastic. There's a lot of hard plastic. There's a lot of bits that can break. Oh no. Honestly, just like the MonsterArts 2019 King Ghidorah, I really don't trust the stands. The stands are really not that stable. I was very scared putting it up on the turntable here, and I was afraid that it was going to fall over. And again, it gives you the tumble warning, and Iris is very much so front heavy on the support stand. So here's what I'm going to formally say. I'm not using the wing parts ever again. They're going back in the box after the conclusion of this review, and that's it. I really do appreciate Tamashii Nations putting in accessories. I would have just preferred a beam. And then at some point down the line, if they do a repaint of some sort, like a night combat version or whatever, go ahead and do the wings then. That's just me. You may like it. Hey, more power to you. But honestly, I'm fine without it. But hey, I'm only saying that just because it's a clumsy process and there's really no other way they could have done it. But they did it. 2 claps for that. If you need accessories, you know I have videos to help you out. Here's going to be a size comparison. Interestingly enough, the body of Iris is not that big. It's mostly just going to be the tentacles and the wing parts that are going to be large and command a shelf space, and that is pretty much going to be a justification for the reason of the price, aside from the over-engineering, buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. I really want to put this out here. I want to make it very clear. There have been some not so flattering videos that have been posted on my channel recently pertaining to the SH MonsterArts line, and I can definitely see how some may argue that Iris, this video in particular, is another one of those and an intentional piece that I have posted to continue that trend. This is not the case. The Heisei era Gamera movies are fantastic, and whenever anyone asks about kaiju movies, the toku stuff, I always point to those 3 movies as what anyone should watch for an introduction to kaiju suit movies. End of discussion. I think they're fantastic, and I love Iris. I know that it's rather obscure for some who are outside the media. That's fine, but I love this section of kaiju media, and I was hoping Iris would be a knock out of the park. With all of the small quality control issues with the paint errors, and I collectively spent 4 hours trying to fix the issues that I had. At 300, no. 250, that's pushing it. $200, I think, is a solid point to begin talking about where the purchase is. And unfortunately, because of the limited production run, with this being a premium Bandai release, I don't see it dropping to that amount. So if you are a fan of Iris and you pick this up, I fully expect there to be frustrations for everyone. Of course, my experience may be different from yours, that you're going to have to put up with just because of the nature of the beast. It very much so disappoints me to give a not so flattering review. I don't want to say negative just because of my own bias, but clearly it was, of this figure. I unfortunately feel that this isn't going to do well in the market, and that may be the fork in it for future Gamera villains, which sucks because I wanted more.